Williams is boldly calling its 2026 F1 car the team's most complex, best design ever, even though another troubled winter has exposed more weaknesses in the organisation. We've seen the FW48 livery on some basic renders that are missing key car details like suspension components entirely, but the real thing still hasn't made its on-track debut, as Williams missed the first 2026 test at Barcelona due to delays in the car build. Like us, you might be wondering, how has this happened again? As it's the third time in 7 seasons that Williams has been late finishing its car. In 2019, that manifested in missing a large chunk of the first preseason test and building a rubbish car with some illegal parts even used in testing. In 2024, the car made it to testing but was overweight, and Williams was short on spares, so had a compromised development schedule as a result. The big question this time is whether that carries into the season itself and negates the main advantage Williams had given itself by switching off 2025 development earlier than any other team last year to maximise focus on 2026. First, we can explain what we've learned about why Williams fell behind in its FW48 build and had trouble with some crash tests. There's a similarity to what happened a couple of years ago, when team boss James Vowles said trying to push through a car build closer to the standard he was used to at Mercedes became a nightmare because Williams' systems and tools were nowhere near good enough. Vowles lamented an over-reliance on logging the whole build in Microsoft Excel and said workers at the factory didn't know where parts were or how long it would take for them to arrive. Vowles insists the FW48 hasn't suffered the same kind of messy, disorganised chaos, but the similarity is that according to him, Williams has bumped up against a bigger limitation than expected as it tried to level up its car design and production yet again. This car's been developed in a way that is not what Williams were doing 2 years ago, which means more flexible aerodynamic parts but also different mechanical design choices like the front suspension layout. That makes us very intrigued to see the real FW48. But the bottom line is Williams claims it's made the car much more complex than normal, even beyond the increase in workload caused by massive car and engine rule changes for 2026. Williams ended up with triple the workload to produce this car than any previous project it's managed, according to Vowles, and was trying to design parts in a way that meant passing all the necessary crash tests took longer than expected. As we'll explain later, we don't know the full extent of the consequences with how Williams went on to address this, but the problems getting the car ready is where Vowles made a key admission, that he failed to scale the business in the right way to match his ambitious targets. Williams' performance in 2025, scoring 2 podiums and finishing 5th in the championship, is clearly testament to Vowles' leadership taking the team in a better direction. But 2 bad builds in 3 years suggests this is coming at a big price, even in the context of Vowles' rationale that you need to push the boundaries and limits hard and aggressively and find your limitations. The key difference to 2 years ago is this time Williams had a better grasp of its plight but just couldn't do anything to stop it. Williams knew where parts were and when parts would exist, but it all just came together too slowly. Delays happen sometimes in F1, but Vowles said you can make it up if it happens in 1 week, but if it happens for several weeks running, you can't. Williams is still lacking the tools, the human resource, the leadership, or any combination of the 3 to be able to react quickly enough when problems emerge. Then it just falls further and further behind. Vowles says he is too reliant on people going above and beyond to make sure we get the car built, and that means Williams is still in a halfway house with systems not quite fit for purpose and being held together by old techniques and human glue. Given Vowles said he didn't scale up the organisation sufficiently, that begs the question, why not? Did he underestimate it in the first place, or did the project get out of hand? When we asked Vowles how this happened and whether the problems could have been avoided, he admitted that Williams thought the 2026 car build would be very, very tough but achievable. Obviously, it wasn't, at least not for Williams, and Vowles wishes the team didn't have to suffer this much to discover the weaknesses still exist to the extent that they do. But the silver lining is that by getting so deep into the wound, Williams has learned more about a range of issues that it can address for the future. Again, this is similar to 2024, and it might mean that Williams didn't make as much progress as it thought when it fixed the worst of its problems a couple of years ago. Or it could signify just how far behind Williams had fallen, how much more work it will take than expected to really catch up, and that there could be different bottlenecks in the future. It's on Vowles as team principal to improve Williams as quickly as possible, but any failings fall on his shoulders too. He spent the last year telling us how everything was geared towards 2026, only to misjudge what Williams needed to then build the car. We may not get a better explanation for how exactly this happened, but in simple terms, Williams didn't want to sacrifice the design it was working on for something more conservative. Valve basically gave the extreme example that it's no good starting aero work on January the 1st, 2025 if you then sign the car off a month later to guarantee you'll have it built in time for 2026. Testing aero and suspension ideas thoroughly means holding back chassis, big aero parts and top surface bodywork until the big decisions are signed off, which happens as late as a team is willing to dare to make sure it's all as advanced as possible. Williams thought it could get away with releasing all those parts to be produced when it did, and it misjudged how long it would take to get its well-developed 2026 ideas produced into a real working car. This ties in with the failure to scale up the organisation sufficiently. Williams underestimated the extent of the challenge or overestimated the level it was already at. This left it choosing between building the car it wanted and being late, or compromising the car design to speed up the process. By doing the former, Williams is adamant that aerodynamically the 2025 sacrifice has translated into the 2026 car. Valve says it is, in aero and design terms, a lot more complex than anything we've put out before, and the delay is simply the outcome of trying to keep as much performance on it as possible. How good the car will be compared to others is impossible to judge right now, but against Williams' own metrics, Valve calls it the best I have seen us produce here. What the Bahrain test will start to tell us is whether that's come at too big a cost, and you can get the inside track on Williams' real FW48 plus all the other big F1 2026 talking points by joining the Race Members Club. We're running a 7-day free trial, so it's the perfect time to check out the Members Club and make us your F1 Paddock Pass for the new season. Just click the link in the description to claim your free trial. The immediate consequence this had for Williams is that it lost 3 days of testing and is now some 2,000 kilometers of on-track running behind the teams it aspires to be on the level of. It's missing a lot of knowledge for the engineers and drivers to perfect how the cars and engines need to be used on track, it's missing a correlation for where its simulated aerodynamics and vehicle dynamics really are, and it's missing real-world reliability validation. But Valve believes the FW48 won't be compromised longer term by missing that, because the 2 3-day tests coming up in Bahrain are enough for it to work through everything required. He also said the track time in Spain completed by others was still beneficial to Williams in a small way because the Mercedes engine and gearbox it will use has now been thoroughly tested by others, and that will be relevant to Williams itself. Williams conducted an intense virtual track test program in lieu of being at Barcelona for real, which tested the chassis, engine and gearbox all together and helped Williams learn about its cooling system, which is another architectural element that Valve says is very different on this car. Valve said the VTT work flushed out a lot of the demons buried in the car, but Williams still intends to run the FW48 in a shakedown before the first Bahrain test starts next week. This is all with a view to ensuring the car runs as reliably as possible. But there's a final uncertainty: will it all be worth it? The jury's out on whether or not the car's overweight and will be compromised into the season like it was in 2024. Valve hasn't convincingly shut down speculation that the car is too heavy at the moment, and it feels more of a question of how overweight is it rather than is it overweight at all. If the car's heavy, whether that's because lots of parts are just a bit bulky or because certain areas had to be reinforced to pass certain crash tests, then Williams will make losing weight a key development priority. That comes at the cost of its original upgrade program though, and if there are any lingering lags in the production process, will Williams end up tight on spares like it did a couple of years ago too? There's clearly time to show that it was right to do the car this way, but it's all enough to at least wonder if Williams has really maximised the opportunity it teed 2026 up to be.